Welcome everyone for Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee for June the 3rd. I'll just ask if there's any conflict of interest or pecuniary interest regarding matters listed on the agenda. Seeing Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I have a conflict of item 7.1. I have a family member that lives in the Bean Drive area.
And that's noted. And okay, no one else. We'll go on to the consent items. Can I get a mover for the consent items? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? And consent items carry. We'll move on to the advertised part of our meeting. And this is a reminder that public participation is welcomed. At meetings, we are committed to engaging in a respectful and constructive dialogue with members of the community, and conducting yourself in any of the following manners may result in an immediate removal from the meeting, and that is interrupting councillors, staff, or other delegations, derogatory statements about councillors, staff, or others, and hate speech or defamatory comments. One last reminder for delegations, please do not take offense if following your presentation there are no questions from council. This is council's time to really listen and reflect upon the opinions and ideas shared with us from our community members. And also, please be advised, item 5.2, Citywide Lodging House Review, was previously considered at the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee meeting on October 30th, 2023, as well as council meeting on November 6, 2023, and was referred to a standing committee of council to allow considerations of the zoning, of the official plan and zoning amendments to be considered concurrently with the new lodging house licensing bylaw. With that, we have Kristen Vandergeld, manager for licensing, as well as Ms. Goss, you're present as well. There is a shared. Okay. Unless I'm not reading this properly, there's no presentation, right? There is? Okay. Oh. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing something. But on to staff for the presentation first.
Good evening, Chair. We're here tonight to talk about the shared accommodation licensing and citywide lodging house review. The city has an existing lodging house bylaw that licenses approximately 20 lodging houses. License applications for a lodging house are limited, in part due to the minimum distance separation requirements in the city's current zoning bylaw. A review of the existing lodging house bylaw was undertaken as part of the Lower Dune study. Updates to the current framework are necessary due to the changing rental landscape and human rights concerns. Many municipalities have begun to license short-term rental accommodations through Airbnb, Vrbo, etc. The goals of this licensing framework would be for consumer protection, health and safety, and nuisance control.
The city has a number of housing-related studies and initiatives in progress, and through Council's approval since March of 2023, many have also been completed. Throughout June, Council will consider the next few housing initiatives, most of which are related to action items from Kitchener's Housing for All strategy. Tonight, staff are bringing forward recommended updates to Kitchener's official plan, zoning bylaw, and a new framework for licensing lodging homes and shared accommodations. Kitchener's Housing for All strategy outlined an opportunity to update city rules to enable safe, affordable housing choices across the housing continuum. Permitting lodging houses citywide alongside the proposed licensing framework will ensure safe operation of lodging homes while promoting the health and safety of renters. It will also address Ontario Human Rights Commission comments that maintaining regulations that are geared solely towards rental housing, like minimum separation distances, are discriminatory. Shared accommodations like lodging homes and short-term rentals have become an increasingly prevalent housing option, necessitating a well-defined licensing framework.
Proposed bylaw definitions were created to align with the Ontario Building Code and the Fire Code. Exclusions were added where other regulations already apply, such as long-term care homes, retirement homes, Homes for Special Cares Act. These definitions would also exclude long-term rentals, which would encompass rental periods exceeding 90 days, or that are designed to accommodate less than 5 residents in total or people living as a family unit or household.
The proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments include lodging homes as a permitted use anywhere throughout the city that other residential uses are permitted. Minimum separation distances would also be removed. An updated parking rate of 1 space per lodging home would be required in areas outside of protected major transit station areas. These recommendations remain the same as was before Council in October, November of last year.
This proposed bylaw will repeal and replace the existing lodging house bylaw and will expand to include short-term rentals. The aim for the licensing framework is to ensure the city's ability to maintain public safety, provide nuisance control, and consumer protection. Licensing frameworks put safety first for renters by way of more robust application requirements and inspection requirements for all types of shared accommodations. Application requirements would include a police clearance check, proof of insurance, accurate and detailed floor plans, additional contact person that must respond within a prescribed time frame. Inspections and/or approvals from various city departments would include fire, property standards, building or planning where applicable. The bylaw outlines regulations for lodging houses and short-term rentals, which are classified as a Class A principal residence and Class B non-principal residence. Licensing fees will range from $450 to $750 and are based on a cost recovery model. A valid City of Kitchener license number must be included on all advertising for short-term accommodations. A list of licensed shared accommodations will be available via a public registry and will include the date that was last inspected by the city. Renter's Code of Conduct will be required to be posted in all units, and requirements to maintain garbage and recycling in an enclosed structure and out of view are some of the new regulations. Limiting the number of renters per 2 guests per room and maintaining common living space were included to promote a more comfortable and safe living environment by reducing overcrowding and ensuring adequate space for each renter. This can also make it easier to enforce lease agreements, maintain property standards, and reduce the risk of conflict among renters and promote a sense of privacy and security within the unit. Various consultation and program resources were conducted. Staff engaged the use of the Engage WR platform to solicit feedback surrounding the shared accommodations. That included the changes to current regulations of lodging houses and short-term rental accommodations. The engagement was low on these surveys, but the key themes and responses were surrounding the safety and security, nuisance control, a need for resource guides for tenants, the ability to submit online applications, lower current licensing fees, and necessity to permit short-term rental stays that's beyond a 30-day rental period. Staff reached out to specific groups, including but not limited to Conestoga Students, Inc., House of Friendship, Lived Experience, Kitchener Housing, Inc., Waterloo Regional Police, Leadership Waterloo, Housing for All Subcommittee, the Working Centre, current lodging house owners, members of KW Airbnb, and short-term rental host platforms. There will be a continuation of internal and external stakeholder engagement associated with the implementation of the new shared accommodation bylaw. Staff will continue to maintain an open dialogue with impacted stakeholder groups, and we aim to identify significant changes needed to the licensing framework.
The proposed amendments before the committee today have been done in collaboration between licensing, planning, housing policy, and legal staff, and in further collaboration with other staff across the corporation. By aligning the timing out to land use and zoning with updates to licensing, there are opportunities to streamline decision-making processes to ensure a cohesive and comprehensive set of rules. Staff are recommending the approval of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments to enable lodging homes citywide. These amendments demonstrate good planning, are consistent with provincial, regional, and city planning policies. Staff are also recommending approval of the shared accommodation bylaw to provide a regulatory licensing framework for both lodging homes and short-term accommodations.
With the implementation of the new shared accommodation bylaw, there will be an initial period of preparation, education, and consultation regarding operational requirements, system modifications, staffing, recruitment, training, and administrative organization. It's anticipated that licensing staff will be prepared to commence with a public awareness campaign in fall of 2024. The purpose of the campaign will be to engage property owners, renters, landlords, community partners, and stakeholders regarding these new regulations, provide relevant information, guidelines, application requirements, and we will provide an online presence to ensure that all our key messaging is aligned. Staff will be prepared for application intake beginning in January 2025. Part of staff's commitment to continue to build strong partnerships with both internal and external stakeholders. Such connections will enable staff to be more up-to-date on changing housing landscapes, changes to strategies and policies. Community engagement will help in gathering input on an ongoing basis in order for staff to be more proactive and responsive in making changes to bylaw and policies and processes as needed. The shared accommodation bylaw and fees have been developed with the intention of having a 3-year review period. This will allow staff to develop a means which will assess the overall impacts of the licensing program. Key metrics would include number of licenses issued, permits, inspections, staff time, calls for service, impacts on housing availability and affordability where possible, impact on staffing. Staff will also track their time to ensure the fees associated with this program continue to be fair, accurate, and reflect a full cost recovery model. In addition, staff will ensure all aspects of the bylaw continue to be relevant and make any minor revisions and undertake additional modernization as needed. As part of the 3-year review, staff will also explore the potential expansion of the program to encompass different additional types of rentals. The expansion consideration will include data collected through inspections, permits, service calls, and will allow us to make informed decisions about the program scope. And we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I have a long list of those that will be asking questions of staff. Councillor Ioannidis, Deneau, Johnston, Michaud, and O'Dooney, and then Councillor Chapman. But as we all know, we ask questions in the end, so I've taken a list of them. We'll go on to the delegations first. Okay. Just want to remind the committee that we did receive a written submission from Kay White, so you may want to refer to that into our email. And for delegations, first up is Alex Ostreicher from Conestoga Student Inc. Alex, I really am going to request our clerks to start spelling the last names phonetically because I probably butcher your last name. My apologies. So go ahead.
No worries. You were close. It's Ostreicher.
Okay.
Okay. Through the chair, hello, members of the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee. My name is Alex Ostreicher, and I'm the Vice President of Conestoga Students Incorporated, or CSI for short. CSI is the official student association of Conestoga College and represents almost 35,000 students attending school in the Waterloo region, the majority of which attend a campus in Kitchener. I'm here today to voice CSI's support for the Shared Accommodations Bylaw, recognizing that lodging housing plays a key role in the city's strategic goals to increase affordable housing options. However, we want to highlight some concerns that we have about the limitations of the program. The first concern is regarding the definition of lodging houses to mean dwellings with 5 or more people, not including the owner. CSI is concerned that with the definition of the owner including those who collect or manage rent, excluding owner-occupied lodging houses, will decrease the effective reach of the proposed program. Nearly 50% of student tenants in Kitchener live with their landlord or their immediate family. In fact, those in lodging houses were more likely to indicate they live with their landlord or their immediate family than those who are not living in lodging houses. Under the current restrictions, only 35.5% of Conestoga student renters in shared units in Kitchener would be protected by the rental licensing program. However, when owner-occupied units are also included, this increases to 67.8%, almost doubling the proportion of student tenants protected by this program. The second concern that CSI has is regarding a lack of attention to what happens if a tenant's license is revoked. CSI agrees that tenant safety is paramount. However, many tenants, particularly those most vulnerable, are often unable to afford emergency accommodations when they're forced out of unsafe units. As such, CSI hopes to see the city take steps to address this, such as creating a fund through the application fees dedicated to tenant supports if a license is revoked. This will ensure that tenants can report concerns without fear that they will have to be forced to endure additional living costs if their license is revoked. The next concern CSI has focuses on ensuring that tenants within a rental unit have a clear understanding of everyone's roles and responsibilities and who is to contact if an inspection is needed. CSI is pleased to see the inclusion of a renter's code in the outline of the program, and we hope to encourage the city to expand resources regarding this code. We would like to see the city mandate the inclusion of specific responsibilities such as waste management, snow clearing, and a suggested template for landlords to use. CSI also encourages the city to require the renter's code to provide information about how tenants can contact bylaw if an inspection is needed. Finally, we are concerned that the proposed rental licensing program focuses only on short-term rentals and not lodging homes. While CSI recognizes the city is proposing a 3-year pilot that could be expanded to other forms of rental units, we must reiterate that by limiting the program to only some rental units creates loopholes and oversights that ultimately jeopardize the overall potential success. As I mentioned earlier, under the existing definition of lodging homes, only 35.5% of student renters are in shared accommodations that are not owner-occupied in Kitchener would be protected by rental licensing. However, when we understand rental licensing more comprehensively, expanded to all types of rental units, regardless of whether they're owner-occupied or not, the actual effect is less than 25% of our Conestoga students will be covered by the proposed program. This means that 3 of every 4 students will be left with minimal oversight and the sole responsibility to hold their landlords accountable. Students and other vulnerable tenants cannot afford to wait another 3 years for rental licensing to be expanded to protect them. Overall, rental licensing can be a strong initiative to protect vulnerable tenants, provided that the program is expansive, applying to as many situations and rental unit types as possible while centering the needs of tenants. CSI remains supportive of the rental licensing program, recognizing the overwhelmingly positive impact that they have. It is because of these positive impacts that we implore the City of Kitchener to take additional steps to support the most vulnerable tenants, centering tenant needs and safety. Thank you.
Thank you for being on time. I have Councillor Johnston. Is that for staff or for the delegation?
I'm sorry, that was from before.
Okay, I'll take you off. Councillor Chapman. Okay, Councillor Michaud? Yes, Councillor Michaud, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I just want some clarification, if you could. It sounded in your presentation that your concern is more with students that are living with owner-occupied homes, so they're like boarding with them. They're not renters. Is that fair to say?
No, we're still concerned. They're still renters. Often that the lodging homes, the landlord still will live within the home, or they'll have somebody who's collecting the rent and managing the rent within the home. And with the current definition, then that is considered a landlord.
So that wouldn't be considered a lodging house. Maybe I could get some clarification from staff if an owner is living there, or
I might be misunderstanding your question, but I can get our staff to reach out to you to clarify that.
okay, sure.
Yeah.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just for clarity, though, the staff recommendation, the report does outline 2 classes of licenses. One is owner-occupied and having lodgers, and the other is non-owner-occupied. So we have addressed that, but we'll get some additional answers from staff. Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. Really appreciate it. I was just wondering, from when staff initially started their presentation, they had mentioned 20 lodging homes currently. Do you currently have students who are within those 20 or beyond the 20?
I don't have that data on hand, but again, I could get my team to find that information and get that to you.
Okay. And then what would you say, from what you have heard from students, what are some of the top concerns that they have when they're within these lodging homes?
Yeah, for sure. So when we look at what our students are facing when it comes to housing, we see a lot of issues around affordability and just trying to find affordable housing in general, which then also leads to some big mental health concerns. Housing is a huge part of what impacts student mental health and allows them to be a part of our community and a part of our academic settings. And then we also do see negative interactions with landlords, such as landlords not making the requested repairs or necessary repairs, and also entering the home without 24 hours of notice.
Does your team educate students on what they should do or which avenues to take whenever they have any interactions that are negative, I would say, with landlords? Does that currently happen? Is there like an educational program they go through?
Yeah, so at CSI, we do a couple of things to support our students when it comes to housing. One of them is we advocate for them in settings such as this. And then, yeah, we do have some education programs, and we also do have a legal protection plan as well that supports our students should it come to that as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Alex. That's everyone.
Great, thank you.
Martin Essling. Martin, welcome. As you probably know, you have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you. Hi. Thank you, Mayor, Council, and staff for letting me speak to this important topic. Waterloo Region YIMBY has been advocating for the removal of the minimum separation distance and for allowing lodging homes as of right since 2019, including my time on the Lodging Homes Subcommittee of the Housing for All strategy, which also called for this change. I'd like to thank city staff for all their hard work and for recommending these important changes. Lodging homes are vital because they are relatively affordable and they prevent homelessness. I urge Council to adopt the staff recommendation to allow lodging homes throughout the city so that all neighborhoods have the opportunity to play a role in providing affordable housing. Also, the lower parking minimums being proposed would provide options for car-free tenants without having to effectively subsidize parking spots they wouldn't use. Of course, lodging homes could still provide more than the minimum parking if they anticipate the need. Regarding licensing, we were happy to see the letters to neighbors removed. They can stigmatize lodging home tenants and give the impression that licensing was more about addressing neighborhood concerns above those of tenants themselves. We were also happy to see a renter's code displayed prominently and inspections at any reasonable time. And since licensing fees are likely passed on to renters, the lower proposed fees are also welcome. I could go more into that, but I have limited time, so I want to raise a concern with the proposed regulation to ensure that the aggregate bedroom floor area is a maximum 50% of the gross floor area. On the one hand, this requirement will likely reduce overcrowding for those who are able to rent out a room in a lodging home. That is clearly a good thing. On the other hand, we worry about those that would lose their housing in an extra bedroom that would exceed the 50% gross floor area in a home. They could very well be pushed into more crowded illegal housing, overcrowded shelters, or the streets. It's also unclear how many homes will fail to meet this requirement. A lodging home tenant reported to us that he is pretty sure that the lodging home he currently lives in does not meet the 50% bedroom max requirement. Moreover, the Ontario Human Rights Commission cautions that such requirements could contravene the Human Rights Code when they exceed the building code and are not placed on people in owned homes. These requirements do exceed the building code, as I understand, and I'm not aware of similar restrictions on owned homes. One way of preventing overcrowding without negatively affecting others by pushing them out of housing is to allow more housing to be built. While Waterloo does have a similar 50% gross floor area limit, they also have raised the possibility of whether these sorts of regulations should be changed. For example, the City of Waterloo's affordable housing strategy calls for examining the opportunities and implications of new multi-tenant housing within residential neighborhoods, including zoning and licensing. This comes after the affordable housing discussion paper called for a review of bedroom limits and for considering shifting from a regulatory approach that restricts multi-tenant houses to one that recognizes and better supports these housing types. I'd also like to know more details about what happens in practice if a license is revoked, and how to ensure that this is both a very last resort and tenants are best able to find other suitable housing. We understand that that is the goal of city staff, but just to kind of reiterate that again, the Ontario Human Rights Commission advises that municipalities should consider the impacts of tenants on any decisions to shut down their rental housing and work to make sure that tenants are not displaced without recourse or assistance. Tenants should also be informed of health and safety issues when they are first raised, rather than simply facing eviction on short notice. We will be very happy to see lodging homes throughout the city, and the licensing has some significant improvements. At the same time, we worry that the 50% bedroom rule, while well-intentioned, may make things worse if it leads to tenants being evicted if lodging homes fail to meet the standard. While this has been rare so far, we are also more broadly worried about homes being potentially shut down and the effect this would inevitably have on tenants. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. One question, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, no, it's not actually a question. I just want to thank you for all the work and the thought that you've put into this whole process. So thank you. And, when we get to questions with staff, I'll bring up the one about the 50%.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your involvement in the subcommittee as well.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, next up is Joel Noel. Joel, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Through the chair, good evening. Thank you for letting us speak tonight. I wanted to come before council to speak on a few issues that have been discussed in the shared accommodation bylaw and citywide lodging house review. First, I would like to mention that I was shocked to hear that there are 300 lodging houses operating in the city of Kitchener, of which only 20 are licensed. Is there a reason why there is no enforcement on these unlicensed lodging homes? I've been operating a 7-room licensed lodging home in the city of Kitchener since 2005, and I feel kind of foolish that I've been paying the city hundreds of dollars per year for almost 20 years to operate with a license when I could have gone about this without a license all along and avoid the costs and hassles of having to be licensed. Does the city staff have a report on how many fines for operating an illegal lodging house have been issued in the past 5 years? Moving forward, I would respectfully suggest that the 20 existing lodging houses within the city that have been operating legally remain subject to the previous 2005 bylaw, or at least not be subject to the following in the proposed new bylaw. I ask that we not be required to submit detailed floor plans as stated in Schedule 4 of the proposed bylaw. We already undergo yearly fire inspections where we must pay certified fire inspection companies to verify interconnected smoke alarms, carbon monoxide detectors. They check emergency lighting and exit signs and verify fire extinguishers are functional and up to date. I also ask that we are not subject to Schedule 5, Section 2B, where the aggregate bedroom floor area is a maximum 50% of the gross area. This point will be a problem in many cases of converted homes. In my case, I'm renting a 7 rooms in a converted Century home near downtown Kitchener, and being forced to allow only 50% of the space as rentable would mean 2 people would need to find alternate accommodations. The rent I'm charging per room ranges from $362 to $425 per month, so losing 2 rooms out of 7 would not make sense for me to keep operating the lodging house, and I would have to convert it back to a single-family home or sell, which would force 7 low-income individuals to search for alternate housing. I also ask that we should not have to provide criminal background checks every year, as we've been operating above board and the city knows who we are and we've been licensed before. After reading what is proposed in the shared accommodation bylaw, I feel the city is opening things up to allow more lodging houses to operate within the city by removing the 400-meter distance required between lodging houses and by reducing the fees, which is good. But at the same time, this makes it more, the bylaw is making it more difficult to obtain a license. Unless there is more enforcement, the result may turn out that If this new bylaw is approved, there may be the same number of lodging houses operating in the city. There just might be 20 less licensed lodging houses. I also would like to speak with regards to the short-term rentals in the bylaw. With the same shared accommodations bylaw licensing restrictions to reduce the number of short-term accommodation units in the city, I'm sure that the city wants to open up more units for long-term rentals or single-family units. Is there a reason why there are restrictions are set out in Class B licenses that they can only rent up to 3 bedrooms? We have just gone through the process of renovating and converting a single-family home into a duplex home, and there are 4 bedrooms that were approved by the city's own building staff and fire. Now we can only use 3 of the 4 bedrooms as short-term accommodations. If building, fire, and staff inspectors approve that, it meets municipal and provincial requirements for 4, 5, or however many bedrooms. Why restrict their use? If the same applied to long-term rentals, they could have 4, 5, 6 bedrooms and be able to operate. Why change this for the short-term accommodations? Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Question from Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you, Joe, for coming in. Really appreciate it. Just interested in getting some of your thoughts on this. You talked about converting, I believe it was a single-family home into a legal duplex. How much, or like in terms of the conversion, what does that look like in terms of amount?
All right, so it was the main part of the house was mostly in good order. It was the basement we had to totally reduce, so probably, are you talking about dollar figures to do this?
Yeah, just rough estimates.
Around $100,000.
Okay. Yeah. What challenges do you face as a landlord having to manage tenants or anything of the like?
It's been a learning experience over the years. Now things are pretty good with the tenants. If you get good tenants in there, things run smoothly, but when there's turnover, you can have challenges. Yearly inspections sometimes can run into problems if, property standards doesn't like there's a little bit of chipping paint. Yeah, like this year I had to repaint the whole common area, which, that's part of being a landlord, but I've been doing it for almost 20 years, so.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, yeah.
So, we talked about all these illegal places right now and 20 that are legal. From your perspective, why do you think many of them are not looking to become legalized?
I think, well, some of the problem with the lodging house that I think that people are dealing with here is near the colleges where there's so many students trying to rent, and they just go about running their business without going through the proper channels and doing I don't know if there's enforcement or not. That's one of my questions. I'm not sure why they can be able to operate if they're known to be this many illegal operations. Why do they continue? I don't know.
Thank you very much. We will find out from staff about that as well. Thank you.
Mayor Bevenovich. I'm sorry.
Thanks very much, and thanks for coming in this evening. I have a couple questions for staff, but I just want to get your perspective on them. You referenced the issue around criminal background checks, and if I understood you correctly, you're not opposed to them, you just don't think that you should need to do them every year. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. When I'm checking out a new tenant, I could do a background check on them, but if I would ask them yearly to prove they, aren't a criminal, it's kind of offensive almost. Why are we doing it yearly?
So potentially an initial background check with a sworn attestation that if your circumstances change, you will inform the head of licensing. Would that would be a reasonable requirement?
Yeah, that seems reasonable.
And then maybe every 3 or 5 years or something?
Yeah, I volunteer for Kitchener Minor Hockey, and you do a background check, working with children, and, it's not every year, it's every 3 or 4 years that we have
Right.
to do that.
Yep, yeah, exactly. That's exactly sort of where my line of questioning was going. And on the issue of, and I don't know if this is possible, but for those properties that perhaps have already done renovations and so on, like you have, as long as they sort of meet some core standard, if there was a way of grandfathering them or making them legal non-conforming, would that be an acceptable mechanism in order to sort of solve your problem?
Yeah, that would be, if we could
Okay.
do that, yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you for your presentation. Are you able to ask for criminal record checks for your tenants?
Yes, when they're,
Do you?
I don't,
Okay, but you're able to?
yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Councillor Stretch.
Thank you. I noted that you were requesting that you wouldn't need to submit floor plans to the city, and why is that?
Well, if we look at Schedule 4, I've been with the fire department. Richard Brooks has asked me to draw out the map of the house and where things are at in the past, and now we're requiring dimensions of all room spaces, common areas, dimensions of windows. It's just more of the whole hassle kind of thing. I could see if someone's starting out and applying to be, but on a renewal, I don't know. It's another one of these things I would ask that we could grandfather this in, because I've been through this before, but it's not been to this level where you had to do windows and do it to scale on graph paper or digital format. I mean, it would be an expense and a cost for me to do that.
Okay, and what does the fire department require of you then?
They wanted to know where, like in terms of drawings, or, yeah, they would want to know where the fire extinguishers are, where the smoke detectors are, carbon monoxide detectors, room numbers, and that sort of thing, yeah.
Do they include entrances and exits as well as windows?
Not windows, exits. Yeah, they probably have exits on there. Not dimensions, but this is an exit, just, yeah.
Okay, thanks. And then I have another question about the criminal background check. So currently you don't require a criminal background check for your applicants for housing, correct?
That's correct.
So if that was to be a requirement and someone does have a criminal record, would that be a barrier for you housing them?
No, if they did have a criminal background, well, that would depend. It would be a case-by-case basis determining what the situation is. I mean, yeah, I've had people in the lodging house with criminal issues, yes.
Yeah, for sure. I'm just, I guess, to be thinking out loud here, I'm just wondering, how do we get the most amount of people housed, and will that be a barrier for people who, have a past, a complicated history, and are, trying to find housing and make things right. So,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking through. I live right across the street from a lodging home, and it's been there longer than I have been there, and so understand the complexities of transitions, but also understand how kind of smooth sailing it can be when there is a good match up there. So.
Well, that's one of the reasons I've got into lodging, having this lodging house is I live across the street, a couple down, and the landlord that was previously there was from Woodstock and would barely be there, and there was lots of drugs and shady people going on there. So when he said he wanted to sell it, then I thought, okay, maybe I could buy this place and clean it up a bit. So that's what happened.
Thank you.
All right, Councillor Chapman. Sorry, my mouse is lagging. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I have just a bit of a concern with the grandfathering component. So you own one lodging home, do you?
Yes.
So of the 20 that are licensed. So maybe tomorrow you sell it, and then we've grandfathered it in, and maybe you get a landlord or a property owner like the previous one, the lodging home that you currently own. So I think that what staff is trying to do here is to ensure the safety of the tenants, right? Do you appreciate the value of not grandfathering things in, given that it's not, nobody's questioning your intentions and the work that you do, but looking at the bigger picture.
I see what you're saying, but I also respectfully oppose that because people won't want to, like, it wouldn't be profitable to do that. All these things that you have to do, it's intense to run a lodging house sometimes. And there'd be a lot of, maybe not with students so much, but the type that I do, it would be hard for people to get into this and actually invest money and run it and make a profit or even not lose money doing this. It's, anyways.
Right.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm not questioning your you know, your way of managing the home that you have, but I just worry about, you know, maybe the other 19 out there don't take the care that you take. So I think we have to be aware of that as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh. And just to follow up on Councillor Chapman's question, would you feel comfortable if in a grandfathering situation an MOU was signed, a memorandum of understanding that when you sold the building that the grandfathering at that point in time would end and the new bylaw would come in effect with the new owner? Would you feel comfortable? Would you think that's fair to do?
Yeah, I would think that's fair, yeah.
Okay. That's everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Sorry, I missed Lynn Intini. Hi, Lynn. Welcome. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation whenever you're ready.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. As you've likely heard, ACORN is calling for all residential units to be licensed under municipal bylaw. Many things we've been asking for have been implemented in this bylaw, which staff have suggested will function much like a pilot project for considering if and how licensing could be implemented more broadly. I'm pleased to see that there will be posted contact info for the person responsible for the premises and specific legal accountability mechanisms that must be abided by if one wants to make a profit in at least this segment of the residential rental business. We hope that a public registry of all licensed shared accommodations posted on the city's website will also provide a list of previous violations, if any, and if they were fully resolved by the deadline. While there are similarities between short-term accommodation and lodging homes, and the owners of both must be held accountable for how they conduct their business, lodging home licensing must take special precautions to avoid the displacement of tenants. And I'd like to thank staff for the many clarifications they've provided to EMB members since the agenda release. I believe staff's assurances that a license will only be revoked as a last resort, that tenants will be provided with the knowledge and supports they need in order to ensure they remain housed. But there could be more clarity in the wording of the bylaw to demonstrate this intention. The bylaw only specifies the notification of the owner if there's a violation of some aspect related to their license, and we would like to see notifications posted on the property which provide any current violations, the timeline for compliance, and consequences for non-compliance, whether that be a fine, loss of license, what are tenants up against. Tenants appreciate transparency and clarity that issues are being addressed. A lodging house is one's home. Tenants are best served with full disclosure and understanding the timelines involved. And I'd like to urge staff and council to investigate the creation of a tenant protection fund, or, as the Lived Expertise Working Group has described it, a rent bank that is flexible and not dependent on sheriff's orders or eviction in order to be accessed, perhaps funded by fines collected from non-compliant property owners to protect tenants who must be temporarily displaced in order to bring their home into compliance. To demonstrate the need for this, I bring you the words of someone living locally in an illegal lodging home. They said, "For the sake of clarity, I care a lot about genuine fire risks, such as bad electrical wiring and non-functional fire alarms. There's no easy way that I can envision for the owner to make the lodging house fire code compliant as a lodging house. If installing fire sprinklers is necessary, I don't think the landlord can do this without getting the tenants to move out for at least a month. Most of the tenants at the lodging house I live at have been there for multiple years. I've personally lived in the same one for 7, and there's not really an opportunity to do renovations while the house is empty between tenants. Also, interest rates are high right now, so finances are tight for a number of landlords. I suspect my landlord, because she's older, would choose to sell the lodging house, likely to a developer, instead of bringing it up to fire code. If she's younger, she might divide it into multiple units of no more than 4 people. That way she'd be able to charge more for the new units and not have to get a license. Sounds like their lodging house provider is a fairly ethical actor, but imagine if they weren't. Personally, another 3 years seems too long to wait for rental licensing. But as I lay out my concerns related to this bylaw, I see some wisdom in using this as a pilot project to collect data, build capacity to draft the most effective bylaw possible to hold businesses accountable. Thank you.
Lynn, thank you very much. Councillor Chapman has a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you about the 5-unit number. What would you say would better serve the tenants?
I don't really see having the 5-unit number be a problem for lodging houses, although apparently it does make a huge difference for the students' union and people they represent. So I'm not absolutely sure on that. I believe the 5 units number for lodging houses is in a law outside of this bylaw, and that's why the number was picked. But, I mean, it is going to leave a lot of students unprotected.
Right. Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much. That's everyone. Next up we have is Anne Lavender. Hi, Anne. How are you? You have 5 minutes to make your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name's Anne Lavender, and my purpose this evening is to ensure that our city staff and council have an accurate picture of what Airbnb units are like in our community. I'm the co-leader of the local Kitchener and area Airbnb hosts group on Facebook, but tonight I'm speaking only for myself, as we actually haven't had time to organize a group presentation. There are other hosts here this evening, and one of them has already spoken. So you've heard one viewpoint. My purpose today really is to just talk to you a little bit about who an Airbnb host is and what an Airbnb host does. I know that many people refer to short-term rentals as vacation homes. And while this is accurate in some communities, in Kitchener, it's not. They are temporary homes for local residents, for people visiting family members, for newcomers, and for parents visiting their children who are students in one of our local universities or at the college. My Airbnb units were single-family homes converted into legal duplexes between 2013 and 2019. I have 1 unit in my home in Forest Heights, in the basement, 2 units in the Vanier-Kingsdale neighbourhood, so that's 1 house with 2 units in it, and I co-own 2 units in the Alpine neighbourhood. I've been an Airbnb host for 8 years. I know the neighbours on both sides of my properties, and they all have my business card, and I've never had any guest issues of any kind. I pay to have snow removed in the winter and to have lawns mowed in the summer. Guests review my properties after their stays, so I maintain them because those reviews determine my continued success. Airbnb's platform is helpful to ensuring that good properties are kept active, while poor ones are eliminated. My guests come from all over the world, and for many different reasons. During the pandemic, most of my guests were local residents who were not able to travel south for the winter, but who couldn't stay in their trailer parks. There were also many guests who were between homes when construction was shut down or slowed down, and while the supply chain challenges delayed new home construction. I also served many local folks who were selling their homes and didn't want to be living in them while they were open for showings. There were also many newcomers who were simply choosing to resettle here. They all needed short-term rental arrangements while they waited for their mobile home parks to reopen, while their homes were on the market, or while they waited for their new homes to be built, or while they decided as newcomers what part of town they wanted to live in and which schools their children would attend. Since the pandemic, the majority of my guests have been young families coming from Colombia, Mexico, Peru, Guatemala, Chile, South Asia, and most recently, Nigeria. These are all families with 2 or 3 young children, with one parent studying at the college while the other one is seeking full-time employment. They know virtually nothing about Canada and have no local support system. I have driven them to view apartments, to the school boards to register their children, to the grocery stores. I've given them city maps acquired from Coldwell Banker. I've driven them to IKEA to buy furniture, and have also connected them with other Airbnb hosts who have used furniture for sale. I've driven them to the thrift stores for winter clothing for their children. I've helped them to lease vans and small trucks to transport the furniture. I've met with prospective landlords to assure them that there was little risk to them renting to these families. I've driven them to the House of Friendship's food hamper program and assisted them with completing rental applications and leases. I've connected some with employers who have hired them and with local cultural associations. Their mail from the Canadian government continues to be delivered to the Airbnb for about a year after their stay. I hand deliver it to them. Every year I contribute through property taxes, the 4% accommodation tax, HST on short-term stays, income tax on all the revenue, and now city staff are proposing an additional cost through licensing. While I have no issue with licensing as such, as the purpose would be to eliminate bad players, I'm not sure that Airbnbs fall into that category. Hosts are community members offering a service, and many are helping newcomers to put down roots. In addition, Airbnb's review systems help to weed out the bad players. Those of you who know me know that I worked in the social profit sector for more than 25 years, most of which was spent developing leaders for our region. My husband passed away when I was 54, and I had to find a way to secure my retirement. In a good year, after all expenses, I'm able to supplement my CPP benefits by approximately $1,200 each month. This is the money that keeps me from having to use a food hamper program every month. Please keep in mind that most hosts are not large corporations raking in the profits. They're young people trying to get ahead, young families, and seniors or soon-to-be seniors trying to remain in their homes during their retirement years. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Questions for Anne? Councillor Stretch.
Thanks, Anne. I'm assuming you're a super host?
Yeah.
Is that it? That's what it's called? It would probably be better to describe you as like a platinum or triple gold star host with all of the services and ways you've supported your renters, Airbnb stays, guests. That's it, guests through Airbnb. So you mentioned the licensing not necessarily being a barrier, but maybe something that would, continue to ensure the high quality standard through Airbnb, but also through the city. Is that correct?
So what I would say is that I'm not against licensing. I'm not sure that Airbnbs are the ones that need to be licensed because they're already regulated by the guests. Mm-hmm. And poor Airbnbs don't last. Mm-hmm. One concern with licensing is the cost. Mm-hmm. If I'm bringing home about $1,200 a month after all of the expenses are paid, and now we're looking at putting in a licensing fee of $750, that's a lot of money.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor O'Dooney.
Thank you very much, Chair. Excuse me. Thank you for coming in today. I really do appreciate it. I do remember at some point when I'd sold a house and was waiting for closing on the next one, I had to stay at Airbnb. I know of many families, as you mentioned, from Nigeria. When they come in, it's usually at an Airbnb that they will come in first before they can find their footing and find their way into actually getting into a place. So thanks for all the great work you do. And as Councillor Stretch called it, what was it, super user? Super host. Super host, yeah. Thank you for being a platinum super host. And here's my question for you that I would love your thoughts on. I appreciate the fact that you are a super host, and as you said, guests have a way of ensuring that it's somewhat regulated. Like if you don't get good ratings, you don't last. I've had times when I've been at my meet and greets and I've met with people, my constituents, and they've had concerns about, Airbnbs where, these guests come in and there's partying or they make a mess or they're loud for quite a while, but they don't have access to sharing their thoughts on the Airbnb platform. All they have access to is us to help to regulate. So would love your thoughts on how can we weed out the bad players, especially in situations like that when they're repeat offenders or people that don't have respect for their neighbors as well.
Well, I guess one of my questions to you would be how many of those things actually, we hear about them. Mm-hmm. We hear about, guests who have brought in friends and had big parties. I don't know anybody that has happened to.
Okay.
I know it happens, but I would say it's fairly rare. As a host, I can also look at the reviews for a guest and see whether they have good reviews or bad reviews. And I won't take anybody that has a bad review. I don't accept their request to stay. My neighbors all have my business card, and I visit with them on a regular basis. So if anything were to happen at any one of my properties, they would be in touch with me.
Well, I hope all our other Airbnb hosts are like you. Thank you.
Mayor Bevanovich.
Thanks very much, and thanks, Anne, for coming in, and I guess for continuing to be a leader amongst the Airbnb group, just like you were with Leadership Waterloo Region back in the day. I guess my question for you, and we had the opportunity to speak about this previously, but recognizing that, we're trying to create a bit of a level playing field and also one that does manage some of the challenges that do crop up. Which pieces of this do you think could work or are reasonable from an Airbnb perspective?
There is a problem with some of the student housing, there's no question, and you talked about it earlier on. There is definitely a problem, and in every neighbourhood, and there's one across the street from my home, which probably has 8 students living in it. Not regulated, landlord lives out of the region. I haven't personally, but one of my neighbours has reported them for not mowing and so on and so forth. It makes the place look really nasty, and I have no idea what the conditions are like inside. Yes, we need more housing, but I don't know that penalizing or licensing Airbnbs is the way to do that, the way to achieve that. I recognize that it's a challenge for the city. I do.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Deneau.
Thank you, Chair Singh, and thank you for coming out as well. And I wish, all Airbnb hosts were as good as you, but unfortunately they're not. And I think that's why this topic is on our agenda, because unfortunately the bad, while it may be a few, they put all the good ones on the radar as well. During my campaigning, I heard exclusively from a particular area in my ward where they're concerned about a couple of Airbnbs that had popped up. And their concerns were valid. Their concerns were, we don't know who these people are. I'm assuming you or Airbnb is not doing security checks or background checks on people who are looking to rent these units for a weekend or for a week. And so I certainly can appreciate their concerns. I certainly can appreciate your concern as well as being a good part of the system. But unfortunately, like everything in life, the bad always outweigh the good. And so your concerns with the fees, it's you don't have a problem with the licensing, it's the amount that the licensing costs. Is that what
I think it's the cost. I mean, certainly there's some, inconvenience to it as well. I mean, these duplexes, these homes were duplexed between 2013 and 2019. So, city inspectors came in and looked at them and passed them and said, yes, everything's great. And we talked about, where the CO alarms were and the smoke alarms and all of that, where the egress windows were, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're talking about having to do that all over again on an annual basis. Right. I don't understand why.
Okay. And then previously, so I know the individual who spoke earlier on had talked about having to have a records check. Do you folks who run Airbnbs, have to have record checks as well, or no?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Why would we need a record check?
No, I'm just asking.
It's a question I'm asking too.
That's the question I have later for staff, but yeah, thank you.
I mean, a police records check is only really good for about 6 weeks, and then it's useless. Well,
Thank you, Anne. All right, that's all the questions. Oh, no, Councillor Schneider. Sorry, no, there's one more. Councillor Schneider. No, Anne, there's one more. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair Singh. Actually, my questions have been asked. I just wanted to say thank you for coming in and for sharing some balance on the side of Airbnb. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just add something about the number of bedrooms?
If you can quickly, though.
I can do it quickly.
Yes.
The newcomers who are coming to this community are often large families. They can't rent an apartment while they're out of the country. They have to wait till they get here and they have a bank account and do a credit check and all of those things. If you limit the number of bedrooms that an Airbnb can have, barring the fact we don't want 20 people in a 4-bedroom place, you're going to limit where they can actually live for a month until they get settled.
It's a fair point. Thank you very much, Anne.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, that's all the delegations that are registered. I'll look to the clerks. We don't have any new. Okay. We'll come to questions of staff. The order that I saw come in initially was Councillor Ioannidis, Deneau, Johnston, Michaud, O'Dooney, and Chapman, and then the others. So if anyone on that list still has a question, please key in, and I'll go in that order. Councillor Ioannidis, you're first.
Thank you, Chair Singh. I know there'll be quite a few questions, so I'm just going to make mine a little more specific. With the region now passing or investing in a new garbage disposal, we're going to start seeing a lot of, I guess, the containers and all that stuff outside. So I'm a little concerned how this is going to work with the multiple units that are within our less dense neighborhoods.
I'll look at our staff or any in the gallery. Whoever wants to answer that one.
Through the chair, that's something that we have taken into consideration and we've added into the bylaw. It's also something that we recently amended in the property standards bylaw to look at multiple dwelling units, just anticipating that that might become problematic.
Okay. And how quickly will we be able to, if we have residents that are complaining about bad actors, how quickly are we going to be able to you know, to react to these, because I feel like it's gonna not just be group homes, it's gonna be many homes, so I'm just concerned, are we gonna have the resources to react to these situations?
Through the chair, our lot maintenance bylaw and the garbage requirements are something that are fairly quick to deal with. We don't need to issue orders, and we can do cleanups fairly quickly and invoice those back to the property owner. So we've got a mechanism in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Deneau, you're next.
Thank you, Chair Singh. So I'm going to go to the very beginning and about the criminal record checks. Is there a level of what we're looking for potential licensees? So if somebody has a DUI, do we eliminate them because they have a criminal record in the past? Obviously, somebody who has an assault or a weapons charge. So do we differentiate between different criminal records?
Yes, we would. So the main goal is obviously health and safety and well-being of the tenants at the property. So we would take into consideration the type of conviction, how old the conviction is that took place, and if it relates in any way to them conducting their business as operating a lodging house or short-term rental.
And that's been going on for the 20 licensed lodging homes ever since this was implemented at some point in time?
There's not a police record check requirement for existing lodging houses at this point, so that is something new that's added to this bylaw.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I was under the impression that it was.
It's captured under other business types. Our business licensing bylaw does require police record checks for a number of different business types in the city.
Okay. So is that a privacy concern? Obviously, I'm assuming it's not if it's in here, but is that a privacy concern? From a law point, asking somebody for a criminal record just to rent out units in their space.
So you can ask for a criminal record check for aspects such as licensing, volunteering, employment. All of those would fall under our right to ask for that information. Obviously, that the police record checks couldn't be disclosed publicly to anybody. We'd be required to follow the regular MFIPA regulations regarding that content.
Okay, so is there a concern with people with criminal records renting out places? I'm just curious. To me, I have to get a criminal check for my place where I work with a vulnerable sector. Most people do when they're working with a vulnerable sector. So is there a concern that in the past in other municipalities that they've rented out, people with criminal records have rented out units?
Asking for a criminal record check is standard in other licensing framework in other municipalities and would align with our business licensing bylaw, which would be why we're asking for it, and that we are dealing with a vulnerable sector of the community in licensing these types of businesses.
Okay, I'll move away from that. Under the lodging house definition here, it's a dwelling unit where 5 or more persons, not including a resident owner of the property, is deemed a lodging house. Is that what I'm understanding correctly?
Through the chair, that's correct.
So 4 residents and another one brings us up to 5 who concludes that they're the owner or they're the principal owner. How do we prove that? How do we prove they're actually living there to make it to make it not a lodging house, sorry. Because you're saying 4 would not be a lodging house if it's 4 people and the owner, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay.
So through the chair, it stems from the Ontario Building Code definition. We're trying to have alignment across all of our municipal bylaws in the Ontario Building Code. So the Ontario Building Code speaks to a lodging house being in which lodging is provided for more than 4 persons in return for remuneration. So that's where the ownership part comes in and why we've defined or proposing to define lodging house the way that we are. The owner would not be a person that counts for having accommodations being provided to them in exchange for a fee because they own the accommodation. And the code also requires more than 4 people. So we need the definition to speak to 5, 6, 7, 8, or anything above that. And those folks need to be paying money in exchange for the accommodations.
Okay. I guess my next couple of questions would be for Ms. McNeil. How many bylaw complaints do you receive yearly from either Airbnbs or rental units, I guess, per se? Do you have a rough number? No?
Go ahead.
Through the chair, we currently don't track Airbnb, so I wouldn't have that, but rentals, we do receive complaints often for rental situations.
Okay. All right, that's all for now, Chair.
Next is Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh. My concerns are around the impact on staffing. So we know that we have 20 licensed ones right now. We believe that we know that there's approximately 1,100 out there that are unlicensed at the moment. And according to our timeline, so October to January of 2024 is the implementation and the support phase, and then January to December of 2025. I'm wondering, I know that we're going to have a 3-year, implementation review, and I would like to see whether there's an opportunity to adjust staffing annually, and if we can do that in time for the January 2025 budget.
So through the chair, the report does include the allocation of 3 full-time equivalents, which based on those 1,100 estimated properties would consist of 2 licensing staff and 1 property standards. So the ask would be for those roles to be recruited this year, but certainly as part of the annual budget on a go-forward basis, we could report back to indicate that there is an influx or there's insufficient resources to manage the applications through the annual budget process.
So would it be the annual budget process for January of 2025? Like, I think we're going to have a large influx right at the very beginning. So I'm wondering if there's some flexibility that we can be looking at into that sooner rather than later.
Let's just keep it on.
So through the chair, so staff have conducted an analysis based on the time required to complete inspections for the approximately 1,100 units, and are confident that the 3 positions that are allocated would be a starting place. And so I think in terms of any additional budget year asks, that could be evaluated, but I would defer to Gloria with respect to the property standards. The time component has been assessed to ensure that we are able to address the influx and the inspections required.
Yeah, I think what I'm asking about is some flexibility that if we need to look into that sooner rather than later, that we'll have the opportunity to do that. And I'm seeing a nod, so that's good. Thank you. I'm also wondering then about how this is really going to help us address multiple people in shared bedrooms.
So we have included regulations to limit the number of occupants in a bedroom to a max of 2 adult persons. So that would limit the amount of people that are being rented a single bedroom.
And once these are licensed, then we'll be able to go in and confirm that, correct?
Correct. So they would be putting on their application, which would include the floor plans and all the other details that we ask. So based on the number of bedrooms that they have, the occupancy should not exceed that amount. And at any time we receive a complaint or they're on an inspection and find something to the contrary, we could investigate.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Asling had brought up an interesting point around license revoking and what that then could mean for displaced tenants. I'm wondering if you can comment on that.
Revoking a license would always be considered to be the last resort and would be of dire health and safety to the tenants for us to go down that road. We have many enforcement avenues available to us before we would get to that point that we would exhaust prior to proceeding with the process to revoke an application. In the event that we are proceeding in that way, we would make sure we have community supports and agencies ready to help us and assist with any relocation of any impacted tenants.
No, I wanted to chair.
Yeah. Thank you. And my last question would be, and it was for the gentleman who has been doing the right thing and has been one of the 20 licensed people, and thank you very much. And how we can help them. Are we able to look into grandfathering? What can we be doing here to make it easier for the people that have been doing the right thing all along?
So through the chair, the proposed short-term accommodations licensing bylaw does contain some transition provisions that recognizes the date of expiration of an existing license or the date that the bylaw comes into effect, which is January 1st of 2025. Anything beyond that, staff would have to take back and give further consideration to.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. Lower Doon's been mentioned a few times in this report. Could you tell us how many licensed units there currently are in Lower Doon?
I don't have the number offhand for you. We'd have to get that and bring it back.
So could I ask then, are there more licensed than not licensed? Like there's a lot of, it's mostly, a good part of Lower Doon is mostly rental units. If you know there's 1,100 units unlicensed, an estimate, can you give me an estimate of how many unlicensed units are in Lower Doon?
I would not be able to give you that at this time, no.
Okay. And then the last question is through this process, will you be focusing, is the plan to focus on Lower Doon first?
There was no particular area of the city that we would be focusing on the most. Obviously, the area of concern that we know that there is proactive enforcement, reactive enforcement would certainly be our areas to start, and then we can go from there.
Okay. I'd like to, I will wait for the number, if you could get that for me, how many licensed units there are in Lower Doon. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Next we have Councillor Owaduni. Can you push your button, please? There you go. Okay.
Thank you. I missed part of the conversations and the questions from my colleagues, so if any of these have been answered, please just kindly pass and move to the ones unanswered. I don't know if this has been asked before, but we mentioned about 300 are quote-unquote illegal. Do we know who they are, where they are, and is there a plan for us to help turn them from illegal to legal? If it has been answered, we can just skip right to the next one.
The large limitation of a lot of these properties being unlicensed is because of the current MDS restriction, which is why we can't get a lot of them into compliance. That's why we are trying to align these two projects together so that we can alleviate that. And with the addition of staffing, we would be able to increase our proactive enforcement to get these people licensed.
So we do know where they are? We know them and we have a database of them?
We obviously know certain areas in Doon and other places in the city that there's a high probability of lodging houses operating in that instance, so we will use any avenues that we have available to us to source those out.
Okay. Will neighbors have to, if I'm converting a home into a lodging home, am I required to inform my neighbors about this if I'm pursuing this, or is it just per information basis?
There would be no requirement for you to run that by your neighbors, no.
Thank you. My final question here, how do we ensure that overcrowding is not happening in these spaces? I understand what we are trying to do in terms of what we're putting together, but someone can just go ahead and say, you know, I'm putting 2 in a room or I'm allowing this. How do we ensure that that is not taking place?
So the regulations in the bylaw do speak to a maximum of 2 occupants per bedroom. So based on the number of bedrooms that you would have in a lodging house, that would be the max number of occupants you could have. So if you had a 5-bedroom lodging house, 2 occupants per room, you would only be permitted to have 10 people. So we would base that on inspections, application information received, and obviously any questions, concerns from tenants that are sent to us for us to investigate that that is how the property is operating.
Okay, so our bylaw team, or I don't know if it's going to be fire, will be checking the number of people that are legally allowed to live there in comparison to what is allowed of them?
So based on every application, there will be an inspection from fire and/or property standards. So they would be on site and would be inspecting any of these units. Licensing inspectors would also can do spot checks, complaint-based inspections to just confirm that the property is operating how they're licensed to do so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your questions. I'm going to ask a couple now, and then I'll carry on with the rest of the list. So it was mentioned that 50% of the common living area was really too high because it could limit the number of actual unit bedrooms in any given facility. Has staff considered lowering that percentage, and if so, if not, why not?
The purpose of putting that requirement in was to promote a more comfortable and safe living environment by reducing overcrowding, ensuring adequate space for each of the renters. It is a consistent approach with other licensing bylaws. However, we are open to reducing that or eliminating it at council request.
Okay. Because I think somebody pointed out that in some, single-dwelling homes, the common areas are less than 50% of the whole house. So, I mean, just a thought. Anyway, okay, so the other question I had to do with the Tenant Protection Fund, which was also mentioned. Has that been considered or looked at?
So through the chair, a tenant protection fund was out of scope for this body of work.
Does it exist in other municipalities? Do we know?
Through the chair, we'd have to get back to you on that, but my understanding is not as part of the implementation of an updated licensing framework for short-term accommodations.
Okay, thank you. Would staff consider, has staff considered licensing all rental units, not just lodging homes and Airbnbs? Pardon me?
Sorry, and if we're going to go into this conversation, I would just suggest that we separate it out, because I imagine we may have some colleagues who may have to declare a conflict on it. So if we can just split the two accordingly so that people can adjust accordingly.
I just brought up, because it was brought up by one of the, okay, so we'll leave that for now. I guess those are my questions for now. Thank you. Next we have Councillor Vrbanovic, or Mayor Vrbanovic. You need to click. Oh, you clicked. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Chapman, and thanks to all the delegations and to staff for all the work on this. So, yeah, on the 50% issue, I mean, I do know, particularly when it comes to student housing, it is not uncommon, including, quite frankly, as I think to some of the university residences that are, have multiple bedrooms around a shared space. I'm not sure that they would meet that 50% threshold as an example. So I do think that requires some adjusting. And so, I'd be, I guess, interested between now and when this comes back to council, some additional perspective on that from staff that council can consider. On the criminal background checks, the suggestion's been made that we could, get it and then put in a clause that would simply have people, commit to stating if there's a change, and then maybe do it every 3 or 4 years, similar to like hockey and a lot of the other volunteer groups. Is that something that staff could consider and bring back for when it comes back to council?
So you're meaning after the initial police check is submitted, subsequent applications would be a declaration to confirm no changes, and we can reevaluate after that time?
Yeah, and maybe it's, every 3 or 4 years or something. I mean, you can, I think, check with what some of our sport groups are using, but I think that would seem reasonable. I mean, the reality is a police check is only good that day, and the next day, quite frankly, the circumstances can already be different. So I think if we have that attestation, I think that would probably do what we're trying to achieve, because, yeah, I mean, the reality is, there could be a situation where there is, someone, who perhaps has a past history that might be problematic, for example, as a landlord of students or something, right? And we want to protect that. But just to be clear, the record checks is not being looked for from tenants and stuff. We're talking about the landlords in question. I think we did hear from a couple delegations where there have been commitments, or where, based on current rules, people have done renovations and so on. Is there a tool where we can grandfather, or some mechanism where we could grandfather until there's a change in ownership or something as a possibility, or is that something that we could look at?
That would be something we'd have to take back and report back.
Okay, certainly that's something I'd be interested in getting a little more information on. And then the last piece, and it has to do with the Airbnbs or Verbos or whatever, the various products that are out there in terms of this. I've certainly stayed at some where I've traveled. The owner hasn't necessarily resided there. And I do think that we do need, while I understand the desire to make sure that there's a certain standard and quality there, and a way to protect against problems or potential problems, I think we probably haven't seen them to the same degree locally as, quite frankly, vacation destinations like Las Vegas or places in Florida and others have experienced, as students go down for a week and party it up and all that kind of thing. And so I do. I think we need to maybe just take a little bit of a softer look there, because I think there are some very legitimate business reasons, as we heard from some of the delegations tonight, of how this is meeting a need in the community, and particularly when it comes to new Canadians. And we know that there is, as an example, some significant housing challenges of that population right now. And until maybe the housing supply overall gets in check, I would be really concerned that we would be doing things, particularly when the province is continuing to look for increased immigration into Ontario, and that's part of the message they've been delivering to the federal government, trying to make sure that we're not adding to the problem, because my understanding is part of the concept that's being looked at right now is sort of a giant sort of reception house kind of concept in the GTA near the airport that would then filter out to the area municipalities where people relocate to, and I think we just need to make sure that we have appropriate housing to accommodate those residents if they were to choose coming to our area. So
I'll take all of that as your comments. I gotta say, I'm not speaking a lot today, but everyone's very Councillor Singh-esque with big preamble and a question at the end. So I guess. Councillor Stretch, go ahead.
Thank you. So just some clarification. The mayor actually clarified some things for me, but just want to be sure that the 50% floor space ratio, that's not through building code. That's something that we have chose.
Or staff have chose to present?
That's correct. It's not part of the building code.
Great. And the police record check would be for the owners of the lodging homes, is that correct?
Yes, the owner and licensees only, not the tenants.
Okay, great. So my question around this idea of grandfathering, could we have a grace period perhaps where current licensed lodging homes, can not pay a fee as long as they're providing the required information for a time period, say before January 2025. And then when we hit that due date, then if they haven't met the requirements, meaning they haven't submitted floor plans or fire code things, then I don't know, then they're applicable for the fee?
We would need to take away the whole concept of grandfathering and report back to council, and if that's feasible, how that would look.
Okay, so is that possible?
Potentially, we would have to look into it.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chapman, do you want to add something further?
Yeah, through the chair. My suggestion would be that if council is interested in exploring this issue further, as a starting point, staff could meet with the delegation that spoke this evening, representing a current owner of a lodging house. It's my assumption that some of the new provisions would be agreeable. I mean, I have to assume that something like posting a renter's code of conduct should be a reasonable requirement for all lodging houses, new or existing. We heard concerns about things like the gross floor area requirements, but it seems like council may have some discussion on that, and it may be that there is a position that's reached that's agreeable to current owners that doesn't compromise bedroom space. Police record checks were raised, that's been discussed. I would point out that currently fees are higher under the current regime for lodging houses. They would be reduced under the new program, so presumably that's not a concern. And so if I heard the delegation correctly, it's things like drawings that remain the outstanding issue. And so my hope would be that based on council's direction tonight, the things you're giving feedback on, that would lead to a conversation between staff and the delegate, any other current lodging house owners that have an interest in engaging, and then we could report back on whether or not grandfathering makes sense, if so, in what areas, or is there enough common ground after council's discussion that we can actually see a path forward to move them into the new licensing regime.
Okay. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Singh. My question is about the Renters Code. In the definitions, it says it's a set of guidelines and rules outlining the roles and responsibility of renters, tenants, and landlords in a rental agreement. And later on, it says the licensee is responsible for creating this. Does this mean that the Renters Code could vary from property to property, or will there be a set of standardized items in the Renters Code?
Staff will put together basically the bones of the renter code that will be distributed to the licensees for them to post. There probably will be some minor details that they need to include on it as well that just relates to their property specifically, but the general information of the Renters Code will come from us, distributed to them to post at the property.
Okay, I just want to make sure that they wouldn't be able to eliminate or hide any things that might be important to a tenant. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I feel like most of the important questions have been asked. Just had a question regarding the FTEs. I noted that it states in the financial implications that it's expected that the licensing fees will offset these FTEs and the software as well. Can staffing, just because it's a large number, it's looking like over $300,000. We're expecting that amount of licensing fees to cover off this extra cost?
So the fees associated, this would be if we got all applications in, all 1,100 that we're anticipating that there is out in the city. So the licensing fee model was based on a cost recovery model of staff time, inspection fees, etc. So that amount times the number of potential licenses that are out there in the city, if those came into compliance, that would surpass the amount that we were requesting.
Okay, and sorry, and staff's estimate is that they will come into compliance? Because again, it does say that expenses related to staffing and host compliance would be offset by the new licensing fees, so there would be no budget impact. So staff's expecting that these will all come into compliance?
That's correct.
Okay. The software, if you don't know this offhand, that's fine, but the software is listed at almost $40,000. Is that like a one-time fee, or is that like an annual licensing fee as well?
There is an annual licensing fee for the program. There's a varying
But
amount.
it's much less?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. And the only other question I had was, of the new FTEs, as is common, we do have one, I'm trying to remember which one it was. Yes, the licensing inspector, we already have a temporary full-time. Is the plan just to make them full-time, or is it to add like an extra, so there'd be like a third person, essentially?
No, this will be to add a third person.
Add a third person, okay, so we'll keep for the time being an additional temporary full-time?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think everyone has asked their questions. I have a number that have keyed in, so just let me know if questions or comments. Councillor Ioannidis? Question, just tell me. Question. Councillor Johnston, I think you want to mention about your amendment, but you have a question also? Just let me know. Okay, amendment. And then Councillor Deneau, question or comment? Amendment, okay. And then we have, okay. Everyone's keyed back in. All right, it's going to be a long night. Councillor, okay, I'll ask my questions first before I go to the second round for everyone else. So through the report, it's mentioned one parking spot outside of the downtown urban boundary, and it's a little different than how we're doing it for fourplexing, which is also considered as a right. We're giving relief in a core. Yeah, I'm doing it again with the preamble, but I have to explain it. We're giving relief in the core, but at the same time, it's a higher threshold in the suburbs. Can staff elaborate on that?
So through the chair, we didn't want a parking requirement to become a barrier to obtaining a license for a lodging house. We felt that it was comparable to our rates for a single detached dwelling. I understand that there may be the potential for a different occupancy of a single detached dwelling than a lodging home, but we do honestly have no way of knowing, nor do we ask for proof of occupancy of a single detached dwelling. The main impetus for the one parking space per lodging home is to ensure that we are not creating an unnecessary barrier to obtaining a license to make them legal.
So my question again was the inconsistency. So if you could remind, as a right fourplexing, it's 3 parking or 2 in our suburbs. Do you recall? Okay, I think it's 2 plus, either 2 or more.
Through the chair, it's definitely more than 1 for the 4 units.
Right.
Correct.
So I can understand that staff don't want to create a barrier, but would there be some, I guess, benefit to have consistency with as a right fourplexing, which is extra density, and same for lodging homes where there will be more occupants. I'll quickly just add that. I mean, our experience of lodging homes will be different than what our community has seen in decades past, where it was, economically compromised individuals with lower income thresholds, where owning a car ownership was a big barrier for them. But again, with student housing, a lot of students some can afford to have individual cars. So could this create problems in our suburbs?
So through the chair, the parking is a minimum. Should folks want to provide more than 1 parking space, they're free to do so.
Okay. All right. I guess then we'll just address that later. I'll go to the second round of questions. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, that was one of my concerns. Thanks for raising that. I guess my other concern is with regards to washrooms, and it seems like when I look in the bylaw, it only says if they have, it doesn't specify more than one bathroom. It just says access to a bathroom. So if you're having a lodging home of more than 5, 6, 7, 8 people with 10, and if it's just one bathroom, how does that work?
Mr. Sealing? You got a key in. Go ahead.
Through the chair, the Ontario Building Code doesn't regulate in a room and boarding lodging the number of washrooms inside the building. So that would be the landlord would dictate how many washrooms.
Okay, thanks. That's a big, huge red flag.
Just if you could stay behind, Mr. Sealing, just in case someone else asks. That's a building-related question. All right, Councillor Chapman, do you have a question or comment? Comment, okay, I'll come back to you. So comment. And then Councillor Schneider, question or comment? Okay. Councillor Deneau?
Okay, thank you, Chair. The licensing of the lodging homes, obviously, it'll be a mandatory thing to do, but is it a come forward on a voluntary basis to begin with?
That would be our preference, so we would like to spend from now until the end of the year doing public consultation, making sure communications are going out about the new licensing regime so that the owners are prepared to come in with their applications in January, and then we will move forward with proactive and reactive enforcement after that time.
Okay, so with this, if they don't come forward, because there's going to be some that don't come forward, is that going to require the neighbors, if they're aware of the new bylaw, to come forward and let staff know that, I think this home's a lodging home with 15 students?
The staff will be doing our due diligence to do proactive enforcement and investigations on our own accord. However, we're always open to receiving communications from the residents if they're concerned about a property that's operating unlicensed in their community.
Okay, so what, I guess my question then is, what's the process to identifying those homes that are unlicensed after this period of time expires?
So we would have, just from internal processes, complaints, calls we've received in the past, we would be aware of a number of properties that are currently operating that are unlicensed, a few properties that have put in for a lodging house that have been denied because of the MDS requirements, so we would go back and revisit all of those. Just a blitz in some of the communities and areas of the city that we know that there's an abundance of lodging houses there. We would make sure staff go out and are proactively engaging with those tenants and residents in those areas.
Awesome, great answer. So I know, obviously, the licensee will have a list of their renters. Will we have access, or will bylaw have access to renters in a specific home? So, and the only reason I'm asking this is because I've heard stories of shift tenants. And so some of the students go to school in the day, and the students are working throughout the night, and basically they flip over. So you have 5 students who are working night shift, they come, they might go to school, they might not, but they're sleeping. Those same students are now going to school or going to work, or not just students, but people are going to wherever they're going. You're only having 10 beds, but you have 20 occupants per se. Like, do we run a risk of that? Is there a risk of that?
We currently are not asking for a list of tenants, but that is certainly something we can take away to include in the bylaw. We do indicate that there needs to be one lease agreement per room, so that would help in that regard, that they're not issuing multiple leases for one bedroom.
But realistically, bylaw would not have any indication if there's 20 people living in the house. As long as there's the number of beds there, you could have 20 people realistically living in that house without anybody else knowing, other than those people in the house, right?
There's always that scenario in any case.
Okay.
But if we were to get a complaint based on that, we would obviously investigate.
Okay. And my last question is, do we have a mechanism? You know, we let neighborhoods know when we're going to put up a new proposal for a 20-story tower is coming up, or a new condo development is coming up. Do we have a mechanism that we could let the neighbors know when a license application comes forward that either a lodging house or an Airbnb license has been applied to on your street? And if not, are there concerns that if something would be proposed like that?
We won't be publicizing when applications are submitted. However, when an application is approved and a license is granted, there will be a public registry provided with all licensed locations and inspection requirements.
Okay, thank you.
Just a clarification on Councillor Deneau's question regarding release of the tenant information. Does staff see any concern with privacy issues? Landlord aside, because they're the one who are applying for the license, but again, as occupants who are tenants, could that be an issue?
It may, so we would have to take that back for legal consideration.
Okay. All right, next up, Councillor Johnston.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Singh. I did do a proposed amendment that I had sent to Ms. Mouse. The proposed amendment says...
Yeah, that's coming up.
Thank you. Yes, to grandfather regulations for the 20 currently licensed lodging houses and provide them with a timeline to bring their properties into the new regulations as their tenants move out. They could then renovate room by room or when a property is sold. But Mr. Chapman had spoken up and said that you will be considering what to do with the current 20 licensed homes. So I think I'm going to withdraw it, but I just wanted to show that it is certainly something that we're thinking about as well.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Mayor Ivanovich. Question or comment? Go ahead.
A couple more questions. I'm wondering if I can ask our Chief Fire Prevention Officer to come down. Dave, before I ask you my question around the drawings, I'll just comment. I think this is your first time in the council chamber in the new role, so welcome. Number one, and number two, certainly been hearing some great things from a customer service point of view. So just wanted to comment on that. My question to you is on the drawings piece, and we heard a concern around the fact that we've got places that were already, 20 of them that are already covered off, and they haven't been doing drawings, and just concern around the level of effort maybe required to do it. Do you see that that's something that, for the existing ones could be grandfathered, or is it something from a life safety point of view you think is critical and you'd like to see that included still?
So through the chair to council, I think we can work with our customers in those cases. Maybe it's something we can go in and document. Maybe our inspectors can take pictures. We can work with our customers to get a level of drawings that we're comfortable with. So I don't see that being a big sticking point for fire.
For the existing ones, new ones, of course, yeah, would have to follow. Would have to go follow the rule. Okay. I heard something in the last response around one lease per room, and I just it sort of triggered something for me, because in student residences, no student wants to be responsible for somebody else's rent, and there may be situations where you have two students who are sharing a room, and would want to do their own lease in that regard. And so I'm just trying to match that up with this reference to one lease per room.
So in having that, we were trying to alleviate that there would be one person being responsible for all the rent of the various tenants in the unit. So we've made it so that it's one lease per bedroom, but we are open to joint occupancy or joint tenancy because the rooms are permitted to have 2 occupants per room. So if they choose to rent a room with somebody, then that wouldn't be a problem, and they could have a joint tenancy.
Okay, that's great. One of the things I've heard about recently, particularly as we deal with some of the supporting housing and so on, is the differences between leasing agreements and occupancy agreements, and the fact that occupancy agreements do give the operator a little more latitude to manage behavioral issues and so on. In terms of the regiment that you're contemplating here, could it still allow for both of those, or are you seeing that everything would have to be via traditional tenancy lease? Or is that something that you need to study a little more? Or
I think that might be something we need to take back, the occupancy versus the regular tenancy agreement.
Okay. Thank you. And so the last question I have, Mr. Chair, there's a number of things here that I think we've heard that we might like some additional work done on. Common living area for lodging, potential for grandfathering, maximum bedrooms for short-term rentals, police record checks, occupancy versus leasing agreements, the drawing piece, and so on. I'm wondering, I guess, 2 things. Number one, if we were to sort of approve it in principle to signal that, this is a direction that we're wanting to go, but then refer those issues back to staff. And then my question to staff is, could that come back for June the 24th, or do you need additional time beyond that in order to do it?
I'll look to staff.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll look to staff. Go ahead.
I don't see any issue with staff being able to come back for the June 24th date with your recommendations.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, maybe that's something we may want to consider doing, is approving in principle, but then referring all that list or any other items that members of council have to staff for further work.
No, it's a great suggestion. I was hoping that someone would suggest that very same thing. I think there's a comprehensive list of changes that are being recommended, and I don't think there would be, general confidence and comfort if this were to approach council with still the premise that things need to be worked out. I think there needs to be a lot more clarity provided on the questions raised, and I know I received the answer from staff as I did, but I think there is a concern about the parking, as others have raised, and I think that question needs to be answered as part of the list that Mayor Vojinovic has said. I'll go back to you, Mayor.
Yeah, sorry, there was, while you were out of the room, Councillor Chapman started to ask some questions about a broader rental bylaw, and I suggested that we separate that piece out. So at some point, because some members of council may have a conflict, so I suggested that we provide an opportunity for that discussion to happen. So just so you're aware of that.
Okay, well, that's fine. Again, if that's she's coming to that, I can have someone else take the chair for that, or I don't think we're making a decision on that. Again, we have the agenda before us, which is pertinent to the lodging license bylaw. If questions need to be asked for future discussion, I think that's nothing barring anyone to ask, and I don't think conflict generally is risen through that question, unless any decisions that come from that question thereafter. So I'll look to see how that conversation transpires from the questions. All right, thank you for bringing that to my attention, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you. I just want to kind of piggyback on Councillor Ioannidis' question with regards to the one washroom in the home if there was 8, 10 students. Oh, I'll talk about students, to be frank, because it is Laura Doon I'm concerned about. And perhaps Fire can answer this question, because I remember about 5 years ago when I first started on council, one of the biggest concerns is the number of students living in a unit, in a home, and all of them using in one kitchen. So you've got 10 individuals cooking in a kitchen. Is this something that has been discussed as far as lodging homes go? I know you're saying one washroom is okay for 8 to 10 people. I'm not so sure it is, but I'm just wondering about the regulations for kitchens and cooking.
Through the chair to council, so the fire code does not speak to the number of required kitchens in a lodging unit, so you could have one kitchen.
Thank you. That's contradictory to what I was told 4 years ago during the concern of it really caused angst amongst the fire chief at the time, the amount of students living in the kitchen. So I'm wondering if staff can, maybe take a look at that as far as lodging houses go in the area where students are predominantly being housed.
We can definitely take that away for further research, but I think we would need to be cognizant if we're requiring things that are more robust than what the Ontario Building Code and Fire Code regulate, we may run into some difficulty.
But I think what Councillor Michaud is really saying, not necessarily about the advocacy, a change of the building code and the fire code, but more so reconfirmation again, because of our conversations have differed from the answer. I think getting a more in-depth answer as to what that building code and fire code specifies as part of June whatever meeting would be helpful to Councillor Michaud. Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Sorry, we're in comments then?
No.
Okay. I'm just going
through everyone, seeing what they have, but you can key back in. Councillor O'Dooney, question or comment? Okay. Councillor Chapman, question or comment? Let's key back in. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I just wondered if we could also add to the list a review of the Tenant Protection Fund idea, if that could be added to your list of jobs.
I'm not probably seeing the staff would have an issue, or you can nod, or if you want to elaborate, you can speak.
So through the chair, as I mentioned before, that is out of scope within the scope of this work. As I see the other amendments that are coming through, or sorry, other things that council would like us to consider before the 24th relate to the amendments on the floor. I'm struggling a little bit with seeing how that aspect would fit in within the body of work that is in front of committee today.
Okay, and I'll withdraw the discussion on the rentals, the general.
Yeah, and that's something you can carry on with staff to explore further. Councillor Stretch, question or comment?
Question.
Go ahead.
How does subletting potentially work or not work with lodging rooms and houses?
Subletting would be regulated under the RTA, I believe, but that's something we can take away and confirm for you.
Okay, thanks. And then my other question was around posting the non-compliance of the landlords. So I'm just piecing this together. So the Renters Code of Conduct, we would, it is proposed that perhaps we could have some standardized code of conduct, and then owners would then maybe add code of conduct to their particular space. But I guess I'm wondering in part of that standardization, can we include posting non-compliance? If there is something that's non-compliant, can we give them something to post? Or, how do we hear from hearing from tenants who want to have access to bylaw and be able to know how well their landlord is doing at providing for them?
Through the chair, I think that's something we can look at. I think I'd want to have a discussion around privacy concerns and whether or not we would be impacting somebody's privacy rights by doing that. But I think what we can do and commit to is providing some further education through the process for tenants so that they have a good understanding of what the expectations are of their landlord.
Great, and could that be included in the code of conduct, that education piece, or I think it was Councillor Schneider who talked about different tools within that code of conduct?
So I think the intent of the code of conduct is just ensuring that we would have all contact information laid out. So in the terms of a issue of an item in disrepair in your unit, you'd contact property standards at this number. If there's an issue with grass not being cut, you would contact this number. Tenancy advocacy group, contact this number, just so that it's all laid out and clear who they contact for what concerns.
Wondering, that's really helpful. I'm wondering if it could be, something like a large magnet that people could have posted on their fridge, or a QR code also linking tenants to more information. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's everyone for questions. I'll just ask for further, just to, I guess, pile on a little bit from Councillor Stretch's question. I say it in jest, but I'm wondering if even it's a possibility, kind of like a report card for the lodging provider. Is that a way for us to specify, obviously through our mapping system, we will indicate where a lodging house exists. Could we also indicate how they've fared on the inspections or renewal, and their overall conduct as a, A, B, C, or D, whatever?
I think the plan would be to incorporate the GIS mechanism so that we can map out where the licensed properties are in the city is something that we would certainly work towards. In terms of being able to display kind of a ranking system or where they fall, that might be a privacy or legal issue that we need to take away and confirm that we can do that. We would certainly be able to post licensed versus suspended versus revoked. We would be able to display publicly, but maybe the details surrounding each of those, we may not.
Okay. Could we post number of infractions?
We'd have to take that away and come back.
Okay, excellent. Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, your comment about report card triggered some of the other things that I've asked for over the years on policies of planning. And I'm just wondering if we can have a follow-up with this on where this is going on a yearly update.
Okay, so again, staff have recommended a 3-year pilot, essentially, but I think what Councillor Ioannidis is saying, that annually, just an update as to seeing how it's being experienced and challenges, and just a general summary of that year's experience. Would staff have any issue with that?
I don't have any concerns with submitting an update on a yearly basis.
Okay, and that could be perhaps something that could be outlined in, all the answers that will be provided coming on June 24th. Okay, Councillor Davey, comments. And for everyone else, if you want to have comments, you can ring in now.
Yeah, so I'll be brief. This is quite a body of work, and it definitely is a confusing and complex one, and I don't think any of us really knows how it's going to shake out going forward. One thing that I find puzzling is how minimum distance separations is a human rights violation, but having 10 people in one bathroom isn't. But we don't write the building codes. That's something that's kind of beyond our scope for now. I really only queued in to say, to echo support started from Mayor Vrbanovich in terms of looking at finding ways to grandfather or otherwise make it easier for the people that have done the right thing and have actually licensed in the past, and minimize the impacts that they're going to have to face as a result of this. Because again, I don't want to be punishing people for doing the right thing. So anything we can do, I've already heard about the police record check, making that a bit more, I would say, reasonable, and if there's any ways that we can grandfather some of those older items in terms of the floor plans and that sort of thing, just to limit the people that clearly have been responsible until now. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Singh. First and foremost, I want to compliment staff on an amazing body of work. Ms. Vandergeld and Ms. Goss, this is very excellent work. I had all intentions of wanting to support this today, all based on the human rights issue with this. And the more and more I dig into this, the more and more I feel like it's very hypocritical by our upper levels of government and the way they classify what is a human right with this zoning, but in all the other zonings where we have lots of stringent policies and everything else, and they don't flag those as human rights. So those really bother me tremendously. With that, though, I'm in favor of supporting. If this does go through, I'm going to ask for this to be voted separately if this doesn't go through, but I am in support of grandfathering the current rooming houses. In addition, I feel we need to have a second look when it comes to those short-term rentals, such as our delegate that came in today and as explained eloquently. I'm not saying that there is no issue, but I mean, we do have a need in this community for short-term rentals, and I would hate to, not make it viable and then have these, become different uses, and I know they may become long-term uses, but I mean, that's what makes our community great, is we're going to have different products and different offerings, and that's one of the things I would hate for us to lose. So, but at this point, I will not be supporting the overall recommendation with rooming houses, even though I do see that there's a merit for more housing. I just feel very strongly that the human rights issue with this is the one that really, really bothers me. And with all of our other policies where I'm more open to wanting to loosen, we're very tight there, and then here we just go ahead, do whatever you want. And I just can't support it.
Councillor Orduni.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just recently read an article that mentioned that City of Kitchener grew by 19,000 between last year and this year. And, the many conversations that I've had with staff, our projection has been 5,000 a year. So almost 4 times our projection in terms of growth as a city. A large majority of those individuals are international students and immigrants that are coming into the community. And I guess because of the position that I have here as a councillor, I tend to connect with a lot of these individuals, and I tend to hear a lot of those stories. Individuals who have to transition through an Airbnb before they can actually get a place. I've heard stories of landlords demanding 3 months, 4 months rent up front, and these individuals that do not have any information or know what their rights are, or trying to settle down into a new community and don't understand how things work, are forced to pay this money. Remember, they don't have anything else to fall back on at the end of the day. So, thinking about it, looking at the number of students that are coming in as well, and the challenges that they face when it comes to finding housing, I support this. I support this in line with some of the amendments that my colleagues have brought up. But I do also want to ensure that as we support this, as we're looking through this, it's important that we help our small business owners who are looking to keep their businesses running. So we need to find a balance between the two. I do support this. I do think this is important. I also want to ensure that, for those super hosts that have taken care of their guests, for those individuals that are part of the 20 who have ensured that they have followed code, we support them. And then for those that have been illegal, we're able to work with them to get them from where they are to where they need to be as soon as possible as well. So I do support this. I want to say thank you to staff for the great work that they put into this. I appreciate the amendments that have been brought forth. I support a large majority of them, and looking forward to the final vote on this when the time does come in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Singh. I too want to thank staff for the enormous amount of work that went into this. I mean, the research, the checking against human rights, The bottom line is that we're in a housing crisis, and I was a member of the Housing for All Advisory Committee, and lodging houses was one of the tools that can help with this. You know, my main concern is I just want to make sure that anyone who is in a lodging house is in a safe, secure place. There's a lot that could go wrong. We brought some of that up. And I think we're doing what we can to address it. I think there's some things that, you know, due to human rights, we can't come out and quite do. But it's somewhere where we definitely have to go. And I think we're all trying to get this right, working together. I just hope, you know, that at the end of it all, that people get the housing they need at a price they can afford, and they're living in a safe, secure place where they can thrive.
Thank you. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Chair Singh. I too want to thank staff for all the work put into this. This isn't just months, this is years of work that has gone into this. I think we've had conversations about licensing housing, particularly in Lower Dune, for a number of years. So I know the amount of work and dedication that you have for this. I am struggling with it to some degree. I know it's important, and I think that you know, in the end, once all the questions will be answered that have been asked today, and you'll come back on the 24th, I'm hoping it can be, you know, a little more simpler, I guess, if you would say, like streamlined. I am still struggling with the one washroom to Councillor Davy-Ioannidis and the human rights piece and the amount of people and the kitchen and the amount of students that could be in a home. And I hope that I can get some more clarification on that. And I hope that we can kind of tighten that up a bit as far as licensing goes. But again, thank you for all the hard work you've done.
Mayor Vojinovic.
Thanks. Thanks very much. And I too want to first of all begin by thanking staff for all the work that's been done on this. I mean, this has not been an easy body of work, and we know that there's you know, a mixed range of opinions and concerns around it. The fact that, you know, I think we've gotten to the essence of it all. You know, with some additional follow-up that needs to happen based on input from delegations this evening, and input from members of council. I think we can get there on the 24th, where the vast majority of the concerns can be addressed, and we can move forward in this in a meaningful manner, because ultimately it will make for I believe better quality residential accommodations for residents in our community, and will allow us to deal more effectively with any problem property owners more effectively as well in a way that we haven't been able to do in the past. Just to be clear though, Mr. Chair, what is the motion that's on the floor? Because
well, I think we are, as you had said it, we're approving it with the direction that staff report back to the increase that.
So moving it in principle?
That's how you had specified it. But
yeah, well, yeah, I know, but I didn't actually move it. So
okay.
If that's what you'd like me to move.
No, that was your suggestion. Unless we want to just refer to June 24th with the added items, we can do it that way too, and that way perhaps some members that may not be prepared to support because some of the information is still lacking, it'll enable them to support at that time. You suggested it, so I'm going to leave it to you.
I mean, my preference would be to approve it in principle, to signal, but I think enough of us have made those comments, and if that certainly can, if referring it simply will sort of allow that to happen. I think the public record will show that that's the general direction that we're going, and there's some issues. So happy to refer it then with that list of issues that the clerk no doubt has noted and staff have noted, and we'll bring back on the 24th.
Okay, thank you for that motion. So the motion is by Mayor Rabinovich for referring to the June 24th date, with staff having received directions with a number of added questions that have been raised today, and staff have confirmed that there is sufficient time to respond for June 24th. Okay, good. Okay, you're done with your comments, right?
Yes,
Mayor Rabinovich?
thank
Okay,
you.
good. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to say that housing is a human right, and I would say that staff has done a great job coming up with this report and suggested laws and guidelines to prevent people zoning, and I think that's so important in what we're looking at here. And I think you did a great job in answering all the many questions that were brought up today, so thank you. But I also want to thank ACORN and the YIMBY group for reminding us all that what's really important here is the safety of tenants. And really that's why we're doing this. So thank you for being here. And yeah, I will support whatever comes forward later because I think this is really important.
Okay, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Singh. And I'll go back to my very first question of the night, which was around looking into flexibility with this. And you said that absolutely we'll be flexible. This is going to be something that we'll be learning from. We'll be reviewing kind of the staffing, et cetera, yearly, and then every 3 years doing a deeper dive into it. I feel very confident in supporting this as well. We know that this is going on in our neighborhoods. We get calls from our residents about, oh, this particular house always has, a number of cars parked there. So I know that Gloria knows where these different places are as well. So I'm quite confident that this is will be something that will be able, it's not going to be set in stone. We'll have some flexibility here, which makes me feel quite good about it. And again, it is about the safety of people. We know this is happening. Let's license it so we can have our fire go in, our building inspectors go in and take a look and make things that are safe for people who are, in many cases, our most vulnerable people in the community. So I guess I'm voting to refer it, but I'm also very much supporting it in principle. Thank you.
Councillor Stretch.
Yeah, just a point of clarification, I think. So we're referring?
Referring is like a deferral, but
Okay.
instead of deferral, it's referring because there's added information that's being requested. So we're referring it to take the vote, the final vote and approval for June 24th, as opposed to showing support or not support through the committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any comments? Okay.
Thank you.
Just wanted to give you that chance. I think the robustness of the dialogue today shows that this is important for the community, but it's also very important by the councillors around the horseshoe to get this right. There's a lot of changes in housing that's happening in our community, and from seeing immense densification of our downtown to seeing a lot more redevelopment in our suburbs, and just recently as a right fourplexing that we've allowed, that's a significant change for our community. While at the same time we're still looking to make some additional changes to allow development to happen faster. That's in the mid-rise and the low-rise side. So when it comes to the lodging houses, I am absolutely on board that we need better protection for those residing in these units. We need better accountability by those providing these units. And that's why I'm glad that we are referring this, because I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet because there's a lot of information I think that's still required. Where I know for a fact that there will be reservation by our larger community to see this change happen along with as a right fourplexing, is because that would have added a lot of change to existing neighborhoods. But that takes a long time, where you demolish something and reconstruct. It's small change, small incremental change. Whereas this, we do know it can be quickly readapted. Aside from those that may be, having lodging homes that are not licensed, the fact is a lot additional investors or property owners may look at this as a business model. So we could have a huge uptake added on top of the ones that exist already. That's a tremendous amount of change. And that's why I think the answers to all the things that members of council have raised is very important for us to ensure that we get it right. More so because we are treading new ground. I know there are other cities that are allowing this, like I think Oakville or City of Toronto, but they don't aggressively enforce it. It's there, but it's there for the sake of being there. What we're doing is, and what City of Kitchener always does, is we're doing it meaningfully. We mean what we do. So when we allow it, we're going to see those changes happening in our neighborhoods. So I think it's really important for us to have these questions answered with certainty that the impacts will be mitigated, that we can bring the community along with us, but not force it on them. So for now, I will support the referral, and I'm looking forward to getting all the added information as well. With that, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. So I'll just outline the next item, 5.2, is pretty much tied to this. My recommendation would be to refer that to, because I don't think you can do one without the other. I'll look to the committee unless they have additional questions that they may want to raise. Okay, can I get a move by Councillor Davey for item 5.2 to be referred to June 24th meeting as well? All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. There is a information item. It's not for discussion, information item that the committee has taken note. I'm not seeing any questions thereof. I'll take a mover to adjourn. Councillor Chapman, all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much.